One ordinary day, a brother and sister came with their class to a book fair at the library. All the children eagerly examined the exhibits, but the brother and sister were bored. They thought books were only good when they had lots of bright or, better yet, funny pictures. When the children were invited to visit the library more often, the brother and sister indifferently stepped aside. Suddenly, they noticed that a striped cat was watching them. His eyes shone like two yellow-green spotlights. He looked at the children for a long time, and then quietly left. That evening, when the kids were about to go to bed, the window suddenly swung open, and there, on the windowsill, sat the same cat from the library. "Hello, children. We've already met today," said the visitor. The children greeted him in astonishment. The cat continued, "My name is Bookvarious. That was once the name of a book that taught reading and writing. I can speak and read. Today I watched you in the library and realized that you don't like books. They're boring," said the boy. "A cartoon or a movie is much better," his sister added. "I thought so," said Bookvarious. "Then I'll tell you just 3 stories I once read myself, and you'll see that books open wonderful worlds." The children became curious, and the cat began his first story. Along the narrow streets of an old city walked a young man. The road was familiar. Every day he went this way from the shop where he worked to the noisy bazaar. On his way, he stopped to rest by a fountain, beside which merchants bustled about. Near the fountain stood an elderly traveler, clearly from afar. The young man especially noticed his shiny, unusual shoes. The traveler soon left. The young man did not immediately notice that a small chest had been left on the edge of the fountain. He called out to the old man, but he was already far away. The man ran after him, but lost sight of him in the crowd. He returned to the fountain and picked up the chest. "What a strange little chest! What unusual patterns! I've never seen anything like it. The old man must be a craftsman," he said to himself. "It's a pity I didn't catch up with him." That evening, the man came home and opened his find. Instantly the room was filled with bright light, colored reflections danced on the walls, and the air was filled with wonderful aromas. Suddenly he and his family found themselves in a magical garden, full of exotic plants, flowers, and singing birds. They walked around, admired the beauty, breathed in the fragrance, and soon it all vanished, like a mirage in the desert. "What a marvelous vision!" exclaimed the young man. "Even in my dreams I've never seen anything like it." So the week passed. Every evening he opened the chest and found himself in a new enchanted garden. But his conscience troubled him. After all, the thing was not his. So the man began returning to the fountain, asking passers-by, hoping to find the owner. The young man immediately approached him and held out the chest. "It was so beautiful," he said. "But I cannot keep what isn't mine." "Thank you for your kind heart," replied the old man. "Because you returned the magic chest, I will give you another wonder." He handed him a small carved box. At the bottom lay golden coins. "Spend these coins, but remember, no matter how many you take, there will always remain exactly as many as there are now." "Thank you. I didn't expect a gift," said the young man shyly. But the old man insisted, and he accepted the miraculous box. The children listened, holding their breath. They were captivated by the magical world and asked Bookvarious to tell another story. "Now I must return to the library," said the cat. "Mrrr. But come yourselves. We have many magical tales." The children did, and in the library discovered fairy tales from around the world. Myth of an ancient people, the talking idol. Long ago, among forests and fields, lived 2 different tribes. They worshipped different spirits and different idols. One day, a man from the tribe that lived among the fields went into the forest, where the neighboring tribe held their ancient rituals. Deep in the woods he found a strange house, small, but standing on high stilts. "I wonder who lives in such a curious house," he thought. He came closer and saw that inside stood an idol. As soon as the traveler approached, the idol's eyes glowed green. The man froze in terror. "Greetings, stranger," said the idol unexpectedly. "Why have you come? What do you seek?" The man wanted to ask for happiness and wealth but feared angering the spirit. So he dared to ask about the future. "Tell me, what awaits me? I'm ready to hear the truth," he exclaimed. The children wanted to know more about ancient times. The cat advised them to read books about myths and history, especially about their homeland. The kids went to the library again and discovered many new things. A few days later, Bukvarius visited the brother and sister once more. They were eagerly waiting for his third story. Scientific story: The Teenager and the Gray Heron. It was a gray, chilly September weekend. A boy was wandering outdoors when he noticed a gray heron, a rare guest in those parts. He was talking on the phone, complaining to a friend about all the homework he had to do, and almost walked right past it. But, seeing the bird, he exclaimed, "If only I could be like you, bird. Free. Do whatever you want." "It's not as you think," the heron suddenly replied. "Birds have to work very hard." "You can talk?" The boy was amazed. "Oh yes," said the heron proudly. "I'm a learned bird. I can tell you about hard-working birds," she said importantly, and continued. "A hard trial awaits you," replied the idol. "If you do not falter, you and your tribe will live better than before. When you see a glow above the forest, go there." After these words, the idol fell silent, and the light in his eyes went out. The man returned home and soon forgot the meeting. But things in his village worsened: poor harvests, hunger, lack of land. One day it became clear they had to go beyond the dark forest to find new lands. But everyone feared the forest. It had a bad reputation. "Who will dare cross the forest and save our tribe?" cried the chief. No one dared. Then, above the forest, a glow flared up. The man who remembered the idol's words declared firmly, "I will go." He set out. The forest was dark and thick. Heavy branches blocked the way, beasts growled, birds cried as if warning him. But he did not turn back. And before long, a wide, sunlit field opened before him. He showed his tribe the way, and the people lived better than ever. Hummingbirds, woodpeckers, and penguins are true workers. A hummingbird drinks twice its weight in nectar each day. Northern buntings sing and guard their territory for months. King penguins go without food through icy Antarctic storms for weeks while keeping their chicks warm on their feet. "Really?" the boy asked in surprise. "The absolute truth," nodded the heron. "Swallows and sparrows are record breakers in the number of work shifts. A swallow makes up to 1,000 flights a day bringing insects for its chicks. A sparrow can bring food up to 500 times a day. And gulls fly dozens of kilometers to catch fish for their young. But they can also beg for food from people," the boy smiled. "Sometimes," sighed the heron, "but most of us are workers, not loafers." The boy thought for a moment. "You're right," he said seriously. "I'm really not as busy as you." The cat finished the story and advised the children to read books about nature and science. The brother and sister did so, and a new world full of mysteries and discoveries opened before them. From then on, the children loved reading. They realized that books are not boredom, but joy and adventure. Books opened wondrous worlds for them, gave them new interests and dreams. Would you like me to make this English version sound more natural and literary, like a children's storybook, or keep it as a direct translation? It all began when Oscar noticed a strange glimmer by the old oak at the corner of the street. He walked closer and saw a small object that looked like a cricket made of polished metal. It crackled softly and sparkled, as if a tiny lightning bolt was trapped inside. No one was around, only the wind rustled through the leaves. Oscar picked up the curious thing. Suddenly someone gasped behind him. The boy turned and saw a short, smiling man who looked like a postman, with a satchel on his shoulder and a bright cloak fluttering behind him. "Oh, what luck! You found my cricket," exclaimed the stranger. His voice was syrupy sweet, and his eyes darted from side to side. "It's a magic compass that grants wishes. Only it's broken. I was just fixing it when I dropped it," the postman added. Oscar, fascinated by the shining toy, clenched it tightly in his hand. "Does it really grant wishes?" he asked eagerly. "Of course," the stranger rasped, stepping closer. "But it needs repairs. My workshop is nearby. Will you help me fix it? In return, I'll introduce you to the golden dragon who lives with me." Oscar's heart pounded with excitement. A golden dragon. He'd always dreamed of seeing one. But then his father's voice echoed in his mind. "Son, never go anywhere with strangers, no matter what they promise. Sweet words often hide sour truth." Oscar stepped back. I'd better go home. You can take your thing." The stranger's expression changed. His smile vanished, and his eyes turned sharp. "Pity," he said curtly. "But since you've touched the cricket, it has already begun its work." Oscar suddenly remembered another rule his parents had taught him: never pick up strange things in the street. The man snapped his fingers. The glittering toy in Oscar's hand flared with light, and the world around him spun like water down a drain. The yard, the house, the swings, everything disappeared. Oscar felt himself falling. Chapter 2. The Wondrous Land and the Sad Dragon. The boy landed on something soft. When he opened his eyes, he saw he was lying on a giant candy. Around him stretched an entire city made of sweets, rivers of lemonade, trees of lollipops. "Eat all you want. It's free," cried cheerful little cooks in white hats. Oscar reached for a marshmallow, but then he remembered his sister's words. "Not everything that glitters is gold, Oscar." Looking closer, he noticed that the cooks' smiles were painted on, and the paint on the candy houses was cracking, revealing cardboard underneath. It was all fake. Oscar clenched the cricket tightly and said firmly, "Send me back home." The world spun again, but instead of home, he found himself in a truly magical place. Tall silver trees with pink leaves, air shimmering like silk. In the middle of a meadow, chained to a rock by a thin glowing chain, sat the golden dragon. Yet he wasn't fierce or majestic. The dragon hung his head, sighing quietly, golden tears rolling down his face. Are you going to eat me?" Oscar asked fearfully. The dragon slowly raised his head. "No, little one, I don't have the strength even to fly. I am too sad," he replied. "Why? It's so beautiful here. Don't you want to fly?" Oscar stepped closer. "Long ago a man in a cloak trapped me here," said the dragon. "He feeds me with beauty, but took away what matters most, freedom and joy. I've forgotten what it's like to laugh or delight in the world." Oscar felt a pang of pity. "My mom says happiness isn't where you are, it's inside you. Try to remember something good, even a tiny happy moment. Like me, When I'm sad, I remember laughing at cartoons with my sister. Or playing with the neighbor's dog. The dragon thought for a moment, then closed his eyes. A faint smile crossed his muzzle. I remember, he whispered. Chasing fireflies with my friends when I was young. They tickled my nose. The thin chain trembled, loosened, and fell apart into dust with a soft chime. The dragon breathed deeply, and his scales shone with warm golden light. You freed me, he exclaimed. A simple, honest memory has broken the spell. Thank you, little friend. The rescue. The air cracked with fury. The stranger appeared again. His cloak billowed like bat wings, and his face twisted with anger. What have you done, boy? He roared. You've released my best guard. Now you will stay here instead. Oscar stepped back in fear. He wanted so much to go home, to his mom, to his dad, even to his annoying big sister. But suddenly the anger in the man's eyes faded into sorrow. He fell to his knees, his shoulders trembling. I'm scaring you. I'm sorry, he whispered wearily. The dragon was my only companion. I wanted you to stay too, to fix my loneliness. I tried to tempt you with sweets and dragons, but I only made things worse. Oscar no longer felt afraid. He pitied this strange, broken man. You can't do that, said the boy softly. You can't force someone to stay or trick them into being your friend. Friendship means wanting to be together, freely. I just, stammered the boy. Come on, she teased, but then her tone softened. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Oscar smiled. And it was true. He walked home, holding his sister's hand tightly. From the moment Mom called him from the window, barely half an hour had passed. But Oscar had lived through an adventure as big as a lifetime. He had learned that trust isn't something to hand out carelessly, like flyers on the street. That real friends are those who stay with you, even if they fit in your pocket. That sadness and anger can make people act foolishly, so you mustn't follow them blindly. And that the brightest shine often hides the deepest emptiness. He entered the house filled with the smell of Mom's pies. Hang up your bag, traveler, Dad said with a smile from behind his newspaper. And then a miracle happened. The gloomy postman changed. His bright cloak turned into a simple gray coat, and his restless eyes softened with gratitude and hope. At his feet sat Spot, now wearing a small collar, looking up at him happily. Lessons learned and home again. The gloomy walls of the magic world didn't crumble with a crash. They simply melted away like morning fog in sunlight. Oscar stood again by the old oak. He clutched his backpack. Quickly he unzipped it. Inside were his textbooks, an apple, and his stuffed dog Spot, with the same button eyes. His heart skipped a beat. Had it all been just a dream? He touched the toy. It felt warm. Oscar, finally, called a familiar voice, his sister's. She ran up, annoyed. Mom's called you 100 times. Dinner's getting cold. Are you deaf? I just, stammered the boy. The man lifted his tear-streaked face. I once had many friends, he murmured. I delivered their letters, visited them, gave them handmade gifts. But with time, everyone forgot me. I became invisible, just a postman. And now it's time for you to go home, and I'll be alone again. Oscar thought for a moment, then remembered Spot, his small, worn-out stuffed dog with button eyes, his lucky charm for tests. He reached into his backpack. Spot was there. He held it out gently to the man. Here, this is my friend, Spot. He's loyal and always with me. Now he can stay with you. The postman took the toy in surprise. Suddenly the plush dog came to life. He turned into a real, cheerful puppy. Woof! Barked Spot, wagging his tail and licking the man's cheek. On the open page was a photograph, the very same postman, standing among happy people with a dog at his side. The headline read, "Postman opens animal shelter. Would you like me to make it sound more poetic and fairy tale-like, for a children's book style, or keep it in this clear, story narrative English for easy reading?" The Little Racer Who Never Gave Up. In the small town of Motortown, where the roads twisted between the hills like silver ribbons, there lived a young racing car named Speedy. He was bright red with yellow stripes on the sides and the number 7 on his doors. Speedy was the smallest car on all the local tracks, only half the size of the other race cars. Every morning, Speedy woke up with the first rays of the sun and drove to the lookout point, from where he could see the Grand Motortown Rally, the most prestigious race in the whole region. He would watch the track for hours, imagining himself racing on it, overtaking one competitor after another. One day I'll win the Grand Rally, said Speedy to his reflection in puddles after the rain. I'll be the fastest car on the track. But when Speedy told the older cars in the town square about his dream, they just laughed. Ha ha ha, roared the shiny black sports car Turbo. You, in the Grand Rally? You wouldn't even make it past the first turn. Your little wheels would fall off. Kid, that track's not for tiny cars like you, said the big SUV Rocky kindly but firmly. You'd better stick to the kiddie park, snorted the sleek racer Flash. After such words, Speedy lowered his headlights sadly and rolled home slowly. But one day, while he was standing on the lookout again, an old blue pickup truck named Doc drove up to him. Doc had once been a famous mechanic who helped many champions. Don't listen to them, kid, said Doc, noticing Speedy's sad look. Size isn't what wins races. What really matters is heart, skill, and perseverance. Do you really think so, Doc? Speedy asked, his headlights shining with hope. Of course. And if you want, I can help you train for the rally. From that day on, Speedy began training. Every morning, even when the rain drummed on his roof, he drove to an old abandoned track outside town. Doc made a special training plan just for him. Let's start with turns, said Doc. The Grand Rally has 6 very sharp curves. You'll need to take them without losing speed. Speedy practiced from dawn till dusk. Again and again he raced through tricky turns. Sometimes he skidded into the mud, but each time he got back on track. Doc taught him how to balance his weight and choose the perfect racing line. After a month, Speedy had mastered the corners and moved on to the next challenge, hills and slopes. There are 3 steep climbs in the rally, explained Doc. Most cars lose time there. We'll need to boost your little engine. But Speedy ignored them. He proudly approached the counter and said, Speedy, number 7. I'd like to register for the Grand Rally. The registrar, a sleek silver sedan, looked at the tiny car in surprise, but added him to the list of participants. That night, Speedy couldn't sleep. Doc gave his systems one last check. You're ready, kid, said the old mechanic. Remember everything I taught you. A race isn't only about speed, it's about overcoming challenges. Sunny attached little lucky stars to Speedy's sides. I'll be cheering for you the whole time, she said. The next morning, the stands were full of spectators. Many pointed and whispered about the tiny red car lined up with the big, powerful racers. On your marks. Get set. Go. The signal sounded, and all the cars shot forward. The larger, stronger racers quickly took the lead. After the first lap, Speedy was last. Some spectators shook their heads and even began leaving, thinking the race was already decided. But Speedy didn't give up. He remembered all of Doc's lessons and began to apply them. On the sharp turns, where big cars had to slow down, Speedy took perfect lines and kept his speed. On the climbs, he pushed his little engine to the limit. By the middle of the race, Speedy had overtaken several racers. He was now in the middle of the pack and getting closer to the leaders. "Look, the little guy's not giving up," the crowd cheered. Then disaster struck. On a rough section of the track, Speedy hit a sharp rock and punctured his front tire. He swerved hard and barely avoided spinning out. "I've got a flat," cried Speedy, pulling over to the side. It seemed like the race was over for him. Other cars zoomed past, some honking mockingly. As Turbo passed, he shouted, "Told you this track isn't for toy cars." Speedy felt tears of oil welling up in his headlights. But suddenly he saw Doc and Sonny rushing toward him. "We'll help you," shouted Sonny. "We've got a spare tire." Doc quickly changed the wheel while Sonny wiped the dust from Speedy's headlights. "You're 2 laps behind," Doc said, finishing the repair. "But the race isn't over. Remember what I told you about true champions?" "True champions never give up," said Speedy firmly. "Exactly. Now go." Speedy raced back onto the track. He was last again, but he didn't care. With renewed determination, he began to catch up. Lap after lap, turn after turn, he passed one car after another. By the final lap, Speedy had climbed to 5th place. Ahead of him were Turbo, Flash, Rocky, and another racer. It seemed impossible to catch them, but Speedy kept pushing. The crowd stood up, cheering loudly. Go, Speedy. Go. Turbo crossed the finish line first, followed by Flash and Rocky. Speedy finished 5th, but when he crossed the line, the crowd erupted in applause as if he had won. At the award ceremony, the chief judge, a grand silver Rolls-Royce, handed out the trophies. Turbo received the big gold cup for first place. Then the judge announced, "And now, a special award for courage and determination goes to racer number 7, Speedy." Speedy couldn't believe his headlights as he rolled onto the podium. He received a beautiful silver trophy. This young racer showed us all that the true spirit of competition isn't measured by size or power," said the judge. "He showed real courage and perseverance." Even Turbo, Flash, and Rocky looked at him with respect. "You really surprised us, kid," said Turbo. "I've never seen anyone fight so hard after a breakdown." "Sorry for laughing at you," added Rocky. "You proved you belong here. Next year, we'll have to work hard to beat you," smiled Flash. Speedy beamed with happiness. Doc winked at him, and Sonny pressed close to his side. "See?" said Doc. "You're a true champion, not because you finished first, but because you never gave up." That evening, the whole town of Motortown celebrated all the racers, but especially the little red car who had taught them an important lesson. Never give up just because you're small or others doubt you. If you believe in yourself and keep working hard, you'll always reach your dreams. And the next day, Speedy was already back on the practice track, training for the next rally, ready to go even faster. The Gift of the Fairies. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a king and a queen. For many years they had no children, and their sorrow was beyond words. They tried everything they could, but all in vain. Then, one day, a miracle happened. The queen became pregnant and gave birth to a daughter. They named her Dorothea, which means, gift of God. For the princess's christening, the king and queen invited 7 fairies who lived in the kingdom, so that each could bestow a blessing upon the newborn. After the ceremony, the royal court gathered in the palace for a grand feast. But just as everyone sat down, an unexpected guest entered, the old witch Astrid, who hadn't been seen for over 50 years. Most thought she had died in her lonely tower. The king, not wanting to offend her, immediately ordered a seat and table setting to be prepared. But unfortunately, there were only 7 golden cases made, one for each invited fairy godmother. The old witch took it as a deliberate insult. Furious, she began to mutter angrily under her breath. Soon it was time for each fairy to give her gift to the princess. One of the youngest fairies, sitting near Astrid, overheard her muttering and sensed that the witch might do something terrible to the baby. So she quietly hid behind a curtain, planning to speak last, to undo whatever evil Astrid might cast. When the blessings began, the first fairy promised that Dorothea would be the most beautiful girl in the kingdom. The second wished her to be wise and kind as an angel. The third gifted her with every skill and talent. The fourth said she would dance gracefully and sing like a nightingale. The fifth wished her happiness and good fortune, and the sixth, skill in every musical instrument. Then came Astrid's turn. Trembling with rage, she shouted that the princess would prick her hand on a spindle and die. A horrified silence fell over the hall, everyone burst into tears. At that moment, the young fairy stepped out from behind the curtain and said, "Tease, your daughter shall not die. It is true that I cannot undo the spell entirely. She will prick her finger with a spindle, but instead of dying, she will fall into a deep sleep for 50 years. And with her, the entire kingdom shall sleep, until one day a young prince comes and awakens her." The court breathed a sigh of relief. But the other fairies were angered by Astrid's cruelty. Together they added their own counterspell. "Astrid, your behavior is shameful. We cannot cancel your curse, but we can bind you with ours. When the princess pricks her finger and the kingdom falls asleep, you shall lose your magic and become mortal. You will be cast out into unknown lands, to live among ordinary people, powerless." Astrid fumed, but she could not break their combined magic. She returned to her lonely tower, defeated and bitter. The king, still uneasy, issued a royal decree. No one in the kingdom was to spin or keep a spindle under penalty of death. Years passed. When Princess Dorothea was 19, the royal family visited their summer castle. While exploring its many rooms, the princess climbed to the top tower, where she found an old woman spinning, unaware of the king's decree. Curious, Dorothea reached out to touch the spindle and pricked her finger. Instantly she fell to the floor, and the entire kingdom fell into a deep enchanted sleep. At that same moment, Astrid felt a strange dizziness. Before she could react, the room spun around her, and she fainted. When she awoke, she was lying outside, in an unfamiliar place. A young man rushed to help her up, asking if she was hurt. Astrid scowled, pushing him away, but as she spoke, she froze. Her voice was young and clear. She looked at her hands, smooth, without wrinkles.
The young man smiled gently and said, "I won't force my help on you, but if ever you need it, you'll find me at the tavern." Then he walked away. Astrid ran to a water barrel, looked into her reflection, and saw a young woman staring back. She didn't know whether this was a curse or a gift. Powerless to summon magic, she wandered the streets, starving and poor, At last, she found the same young man, who gave her a job at the tavern. She learned to cook, to work, to talk kindly to people. In time, everyone in the town grew fond of her. She and the young man fell in love, married, and built a small, cozy home. They had children and grandchildren, and Astrid cherished them all deeply. Years later, when she grew old again, she often looked in the mirror and wondered how she had ever lived with such anger in her heart. She thanked the fairy godmothers for the just curse that had given her a second chance at life. Meanwhile, in the sleeping kingdom, a foreign prince came hunting in the woods, seeing tall towers hidden beyond the thorns. He asked what lay there, but no one knew for sure. An old farmer finally told him. Long ago, a beautiful princess pricked her finger on a spindle and fell into an enchanted sleep. She will awaken only when a prince comes to find her. The prince set off at once. As he approached the forest, the thorns and briars parted, clearing a path for him. He entered the castle, saw everyone asleep, and found the princess lying beside the spindle, breathtakingly beautiful. Kneeling beside her, he gazed at her in wonder. At that very moment, the spell broke. Dorothea opened her eyes, looked at him tenderly, and whispered, "Aid, ah, prince, I have waited for you so long." Entire castle awoke with her. The king and queen rejoiced, thanking the prince for breaking the curse. Soon after, the prince and princess were married and lived in love and prosperity. At that very moment, far away, Astrid's own spell lifted. She awoke in her old tower, alone. Searching the rooms, she found no sign of her husband or children. She wept, remembering her past sins and her lost powers. But instead of despair, she chose to seek forgiveness. When she arrived at the royal castle, everyone froze in astonishment. Astrid spoke humbly, asking pardon for her wicked deeds. Seeing her sincerity, the people forgave her. The fairy godmothers, watching from above, saw that Astrid's heart had truly changed. They took pity and returned her to her beloved family, and so, reunited with those she loved, Astrid lived the rest of her days in peace, and they all lived happily ever after. Here's the full English translation of your story. I've kept it literary, in a natural storytelling tone, while preserving the folktale atmosphere. In a certain kingdom, in the 40th realm, there was a small village standing among deep forests. There lived a hunter named Pantelly. He was no longer young, yet known far and wide as the best hunter around. Once, Pantelly went hunting near a great mountain. He roamed the forest all day long, but luck was not with him this time. He managed to shoot only a couple of partridges. Ah, well, he waved his hand. Not my lucky day, but it'll do for supper. So he started home, going around the mountain, crossing many small streams and rivulets. After crossing one such stream, he suddenly stopped and stared in disbelief. "It can't be," the seasoned hunter whispered, dipping his hands into the water. The river was flowing toward the mountain. "How can that be?" He scratched his head and, forgetting he was heading home, followed the river upstream. He walked on, trying to understand why every stream flowed from the mountain, while this one ran to it. Maybe there's a hollow here, he thought, or perhaps the land slopes that way. But there was no hollow, no slope. The water was truly running upward. When Pantelly reached the mountain, he saw the river climbing up the hillside. The water actually ascended toward the peak. He sat down in astonishment. "This can't be happening," he muttered, pinching himself and tossing twigs into the water. But the current carried them upward. He decided to spend the night by that strange river, planning to climb the mountain at dawn and see where the water went. "How have I never noticed this stream before?" he wondered, roasting his partridges over the fire. unable to remember whether the river had always been there or had appeared recently. He ate and fell asleep. Early in the morning, he climbed the mountain. The river kept running higher and higher until it disappeared beneath a huge stone. Well, I'll be. He wiped the sweat from his brow. Everything looks normal, except the water flows into the mountain instead of out of it. He sat there for a long time, thinking how such a thing could be. Finding no answer, he decided to follow the river the other way. He descended the mountain and walked for several days through the forest. To a seasoned hunter like him, the woods were home. He never went hungry. The river flowed quietly beside him, showing nothing out of the ordinary. At last, he came out of the forest and reached a village. He remembered being there long ago, though for what reason, he could not recall. He sat on a bench next to an old man and started asking how life was in these parts. "Oh, we live all right," the old man replied, "like everyone else." "And what about water?" Pantali pressed. "Well, we've got wells," the man shrugged. "And there's this river. Has your river always flowed this way?" the hunter asked, sticking to the question like a burr.
What do you mean, this way? The old man frowned. It's always flowed out of the forest. Out of the forest, you say? Pantali slapped his knees. Now it runs into it. Go on, get out of here, the old man snapped. I may be old, but I haven't lost my wits. Don't be angry, father, Pantali said kindly. Come and see for yourself. By the river, the old man stood for a long time, mouth agape. He even stepped into the water and threw in some twigs and leaves, but the current carried them toward the forest. This can't be, he groaned. How is this possible? You'd be even more surprised, Pantali chuckled, if you saw how the river climbs up the mountain and vanishes under a stone. He led the bewildered old man home, where the old man's wife fussed over him and gave him tea until he recovered. After sitting in silence for a while, the old man said thoughtfully, I remember now. When I was a boy, my great-grandfather told me that his grandfather once said, if people treat the river with disrespect, it may turn back to its source, and all the water will flow away. He shook his head and sighed. Seems the time has come. Folks don't care for the river anymore. They catch all the fish in nets, dump slop into the water, even spit in it. Soon the river will dry up, and the wells will too. We didn't even notice it had started flowing the other way, said the old woman and went to tell the neighbors. Soon the whole village gathered by the river. News travels fast. A miller arrived on a dappled mare. Just now noticed? He smirked at the puzzled crowd. It's been flowing this way for 10 days already. What about your mill? Asked an old woman. It must be ruined. Why would it be? The miller grinned wider. The wheel still turns, the other way now, but it turns. The millstones too. So come on, bring your grain. And off he went. Faugh, wicked man, the old woman spat. Wasn't always like this. As a girl, she was lovely, bright eyes, sweet smile. But once, walking home through the grove, someone struck her on the head. Since then, her eyes have looked different ways. She grew heavy and gloomy, and no one befriended her. Her father spoils her with treats, poor man. So that's how it is, sighed Pantali, pitying Akulina. She's become withdrawn and sullen, the old woman continued. No one will marry her. Her old friends have children already. That night, while the old woman slept, Pantali sat long on the porch, thinking. In the morning, he went to the mill. The river was shallower than ever. The mill wheel barely turned. The miller stood nearby, nearly in tears. Don't worry, daughter, he told Akulina, who came up to him. I've saved some money. We'll move to a big river and build a new mill. Pantali approached them and asked for Akulina's hand. She didn't seem that ugly to him, and the chest of gold didn't hurt either. "Don't mind that I'm old," he said. "I can still run through the forest like a deer. I'll hunt sable for your fur coat." Akulina looked uncertain. The miller frowned and said, "Go and hunt your sable first, then we'll talk. But hurry, we'll be moving soon." Pantali turned and left. The miller thought he was after the gold, but then again, who else would marry his daughter? "Father," Akulina said, "let him marry me, even if he's old. Maybe I'll have children. That'll be joy enough for me." "All right," her father nodded. "If he returns, I'll agree." Meanwhile, Pantali was already in the forest, tracking Sable. Akulina didn't seem wicked to him. Her eyes may look different ways, he thought, but maybe she'll bear me children. What joy that would be in my old age. For a week he hunted and brought back fine pelts. The miller met him smiling, and Akulina too. Soon they were married. The villagers were surprised but came to the wedding anyway. The young couple stayed to live at the mill with her father. "Oh ho," the miller sighed. "I meant to give my daughter a chest of gold for her dowry, but now we'll have to spend it building a new mill. The water's nearly gone, soon the river will dry up." That night, Pantali dreamed that he stood by the river and heard a voice. "Let the one who struck Akulina on the head ask her forgiveness before all. Then the water will return." He woke and went to the village, telling everyone he met about his dream. Within an hour, the whole place was buzzing. People wondered who had attacked Akulina. Rumors resurfaced. "Confess and repent," villagers shouted. "We'll all perish without water, even the wells are drying up." They crowded the streets, accusing one another. Pantali brought Akulina. Suddenly, Matryona fell to her knees before her. "Forgive me," she cried. "Forgive me, it was me, because of my Misha. He promised to marry me but started looking at you." And Misha, Matryona's husband, dropped beside her. "Forgive us, Akulina. It's my fault. Because of me, she did this." Akulina's former friends came forward too. "Forgive us for turning away from you, for mocking you." Then even the miller knelt before everyone. "Forgive me for my greed, for being bitter toward you all because of my daughter." And so, one by one, everyone forgave each other. "Look," shouted a boy suddenly, pointing at the river. It was full again, brimming to the banks. "Wonderful," cried the people, rushing into the water, splashing and laughing. Their river had returned. From that day on, the villagers lived in peace, treating one another, and the river, with respect. Pantali was happy. Akulina became a good wife. Soon she grew prettier, she lost weight, and her eyes looked straight again. How could it be otherwise? With 3 children, she had no time to grow plump, and she needed clear eyes to watch them all. As for the gold from the chest, they built a fine house and fixed the mill wheel.